Do we have any idea what happened yet, where this came from? Because it did look like a tweet that would be officially from the SEC.
Yeah, that's right. So it very much did. It was on the SEC's page, as Kailey mentioned. What actually became clear very quickly is that indeed there was a compromise to this account. There's been this speculation mounting for weeks that the SEC is coming up against this January 10th deadline to approve or disapprove one of these spot Bitcoin ETFs, and everyone has been kind of getting on this. This is the big moment when perhaps crypto and Bitcoin in particular will take a step towards the mainstream. So kind of everyone's on razor's edge, if you will. The markets are certainly paying close attention. Not that Bitcoin doesn't gyrate on its own, but in particular, at this moment, it was very much looking for anything. And then this came through, and we saw a brief pop in Bitcoin, and then quickly came back down to where it was. Now, where we are right now is we're still expecting some type of determination. This week, we've reported that there's going to be some type of commission vote, at least on one of the key filings. And there's also a series of other filings that are coming through. Certainly still a lot of optimism this is going to happen in the industry. But yes, nothing has been approved, the SEC says. Chair Gary Gensler made very clear that this was a compromise of the SEC's official X account, and that's where we are.
Well, Ben, can you just, for all of us who just experienced this, went through this within the last hour, how should we expect to receive this information from the SEC when this decision finally comes? Is it likely to be an ex post, or would we actually get some more official communication?
Well, I don't know, but I would probably bet it's not going to be an ex post just based on what we saw happen today. But I guess that remains to be seen. What we do know, and what we reported, is that there is expected to be some type of commission vote, some kind of official type of process, which hasn't yet occurred, right. Despite what briefly was said on X.
And we will be double verifying all of this information. Ben Bain, thank you so much. We'll look forward to you and your team's coverage over the next 24 hours. We want to turn now to a separate issue with Bloomberg's Wendy Benjaminson, which was another matter of breaking news, Wendy, we were dealing with earlier in the day. The revelation that the Secretary of Defense, Lloyd Austin, has prostate cancer, that he received a procedure back in December, and that is complications from that brought him back to the hospital where he has been for days now. Something else we learned, though, is that Biden basically learned that information along with us. Here is National Security Council spokesman John Kirby earlier today.
He was not informed until last Friday that Secretary Austin was in the hospital. He was not informed until this morning that the root cause of that hospitalization was prostate cancer. Nobody at the White House knew that Secretary Austin had prostate cancer until this morning, and the president was informed immediately after we were.
Wendy, how?
Very good question, Kailey. I mean, in a normal workplace, if you got a health diagnosis like that would require a lot of treatment, time away from the office, you would probably pull your boss aside and tell him, this is the United States Defense Secretary, who not only runs the most powerful military on the planet, but he also is in the line of succession to the presidency. We're in the middle of a tense situation in the Red Sea, in the Middle East, in China and other places around the world. And he was not reachable. So, on top of what Ben was just describing with the SEC, through no fault of its own, a week before voters start voting in the presidential election, you have this appearance of a gang that can't shoot straight, of a White House that isn't running things the way it should be. They have sort of laid this on Austin himself, saying he should have told us there's going to be a review, but we are fully committed to him. And of course, they also, as we do, have, wishes for his speedy recovery. But the idea that he thought he could have surgery under general anesthesia in December, then, have to go back for this procedure, and never occurring to him to tell even the national security advisor, let alone the president, it really is kind of baffling.
Well, so what needs to happen here? Obviously, Joe Biden is not going to fire the defense secretary in an election year here. There are other reasons why that might be a pretty bad idea politically. But there's going to need to be some follow-up here on chain of command, on communication. Will there be a new protocol that comes from this?
Well, they do say they are doing a 30-day review. of what happened and why he didn't tell people. He is known to be a very private man, and he may have thought that this is nobody's business. The trouble is, as I think Anne-Marie said this morning, when you become a public official, you leave your private life at the door.
Sure.
And he, like I said, because of the situation, they will have to review it. The White House has also taken pains to say that nothing bad did happen while he was out of commission, and that Deputy Defense Secretary Kathleen Hicks, who is widely respected, had her hand on the tiller and that everything was okay. We still don't know, though, how much she knew about why she was taking over.
Yes, right.
Did he call her and say, sorry, I'm going to be out for a couple of days, can you run the place? Or did he give her the whole story so she knew the depth of this? That's what we still don't know.
Seem to think that he could get this all taken care of over Christmas and nobody would know any better.
Right.
Wendy, thank you so much for the insights. Wendy Benjaminson with us at the table as we turn now to Bloomberg's Dan Flatley. Dan, it's great to be with you as we see the Secretary of State back in Tel Aviv today. Antony Blinken speaking earlier today in Jerusalem as well. In this case, let's listen.
It's clearly not in the interest of anyone, Israel, Lebanon, Hezbollah, for that matter, to see this escalate and to see an actual conflict. And we've had 40 countries come together to make clear that what the Houthis are doing has to stop. And we have other countries that have made clear that if it continues, there have to be consequences. So our strong view, our strong preference is that the Houthis get the message that they're receiving from countries around the world that this needs to stop, and that's what we're focused on.
Secretary had a number of messages today, Dan, urging restraint to lower civilian casualties, also talking about what a post-war Israel and Palestine might look like. What's the real priority on this trip?
Well, I think certainly what Secretary Blinken wants to communicate to the U.S.'s allies in the region, particularly Israel, but others, is that they do not want this war to broaden out into a regional conflict. So you have all the elements that you would need for something like that to happen, as we've seen with some of these attacks by the Houthis on shipping in the Red Sea, some attacks on U.S. troops in Syria and Iraq, and some strikes in Lebanon and other places outside of Gaza. So you certainly don't want to see this conflict broaden out, particularly in an election year, although political considerations are somewhat secondary to the kind of defense posture here. But I think primarily what the Secretary was trying to get across today was a message to Israel that what is happening in Gaza needs to sort of wind down at some point. And he got a lot of pushback from Israeli officials saying that they intend to fully carry out their mission, their operations, in order to eliminate Hamas and make sure that an attack like what happened on October 7th can never happen again. So there's a little bit of tension there, but I think that his message was heard in the region for sure.